Just how resilient are the foundations of the Nigerian state? We may be about to find out. Africa's most populous country has been rocked by a wave of bombings and shootings orchestrated by Boko Haram, a militant Islamist group intent on targeting the Nigerian security forces and the country's Christians. My guest today is respected human rights campaigner Shehu Sani, who in the past has tried to reach out to Boko Haram. How can Nigeria avoid a spiral of sectarian conflict? Shehu Sani, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
In the past few weeks and months, we have seen a series of shocking, violent attacks by Boko Haram inside your country, inside Nigeria. Why the new intensity to their campaign of violence?
Well, for us to clearly understand what is happening today, there is the need for us to get to know how did we come about the violence of the Boko Haram group. Well, we should be clear, Boko Haram official name is Jama'atu Ahl Sunnati Lil Da'wati wa Jihad. It was a group founded in 2002.
And you're going to have to translate for me the meaning of the full name.
Yeah, it is a group of Islamists dedicated to the promotion of Islam within the Sunni ideals, and that was it in 2002.
It is an extreme Muslim group, and commonly known as Boko Haram, which in Hausa, I think, means Western education is forbidden or is sinful, which gives, I suppose, a flavor of the degree to which they are committed to an extraordinarily conservative view of an Islamic society.
Yes, that is true to some extent, but in reality, when the group was founded in 2002, it wasn't conceived to be a violent terrorist organization. When the founders, that is Muhammad Ali and Muhammad Yusuf, formed the group, it was called a sect. And in the northern part of Nigeria, we have a lot of other sects, Ahmadiyya, Tijaniya, Shiite, Dariqa, and so many other sects. Well, their own views is an opinion and dream about Nigeria is an Islamic state.
But without wishing to hurry you through all of the history, my question at the beginning, I will repeat now.
Yes.
As you've said, they've been around for some time, since 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
But in the last few months, we have seen the most shocking forms of violence, suicide bomb attacks. We've seen Christians bombed and killed in churches. We've seen more than 180 people killed just last week in Kano. Why is this happening now?
Well, like I've said earlier, for us to understand these bombings, we also need to know how it came about. Well, before 2009, the Boko Haram was not known to be a violent organization. And to make it very clear, I don't speak for them, I don't share their ideology. But the security crackdown on the group in 2009, which led to the extrajudicial killings of their leader, Muhammad Yusuf, and two other leaders of the group, Bugufoy and Fugu, pushed the group to exiles. And they dispersed and established cells, and then they armed themselves to fight the Nigerian state.
All right,
and it is also needs to...
Hang on, let me stop you there, because you know, you are one of Nigeria's leading human rights campaigners, civil rights campaigners. You have your own civil rights congress. Are you saying to me that, in your view, the violence of Boko Haram can only be understood as a reaction to a Nigerian security crackdown?
Well, to a greater point, first of all,
But surely that ignores their basic ideology. Their ideology is extreme, it is conservative, and it has been likened by many people inside your own country to the aims and ideals of the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Of course, the Boko Haram have never hidden their own philosophy and ideals. They follow the Sheikh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, the 12th century Turkish Islamic scholar who died in 1328 in Damascus in prison. And he is of the Hanbali school of Islamic thought. They have actually been campaigning for an Islamic Nigeria peacefully. But in 2009, a violence was meted against them, and they took all necessary measures to see they alerted the authorities on the need to have such injustice perpetrated against them remedied. But the government of Umar Musa Adwa at that very time refused to heed to their own calls for justice, and they were forced to take up arms against the Nigerian state.
But I'm struggling to understand how you can say to me that you believe that before this series of security incidents in 2009, the group Boko Haram was essentially a peaceful group. I mean, their message was hardly peaceful. In a country like yours, which is split pretty evenly between Christians and Muslims, any group which demands the establishment of an Islamic caliphate, which says that Islamic Sharia law must apply to everybody, and which says, in essence, that people who are not Muslims of their sort are second-class citizens, surely that cannot be regarded as a peaceable organization.
Well, like I've said earlier, in the northern part of Nigeria, we have a lot of sects who also share a dream of an Islamic Nigeria.
Do you see my
But crossing the line,
how many Nigerians,
hold on.
No, hang on. How many Nigerians really, how many Muslim Nigerians share the views, the extreme views of Boko Haram's leaders?
I don't share the views of Boko Haram.
I'm not asking about you, but how many Muslim Nigerians?
Muslim Nigerians do not, in total, share the extreme views of Boko Haram. But Muslims in Nigeria a lot share a dream of a country that will be ruled according to Islamic principles. That is it.
Are you saying to me that most Muslims in Nigeria do not want, actually instinctively do not want Christians in their country?
Well, that is another point differently.
Well, it's a very important question. What's the answer?
Nobody will say that he doesn't like Christians in the country. But what is very clear is that a group, which is Boko Haram, has started a campaign of armed violence, and of which they are attacking churches. And the Boko Haram as a group do not represent the interest of Muslims in northern Nigeria, and they also don't represent the interests of even those. Many of their own members don't even believe that churches should be attacked. But it is very clear that attacks on churches is pushing the country towards the edge of civil war, and that is a thing of concern.
Of course it is, and I want to talk to you about that concern about civil war in some detail. But before we get there, you know, I've invited you to explain to me how Boko Haram's violent campaign came about. You've given me an explanation which is based upon the security actions of the Nigerian government. Isn't there one other factor you've left out entirely, and that is that it is becoming increasingly clear that there are links between Boko Haram and other Islamist militant groups outside Nigeria, in other parts of Africa, from Somalia to the Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb movement to Sudan as well?
Well, in the Maghreb and in the Sahel today, I think issues of terrorism are of serious concern. And the Boko Haram as a group, headed by Imam Abu Bakr Shekau, have made it very clear that they have links with other groups within the Maghreb region, including Al-Qaeda.
The Niger foreign minister
and also
said just the other day.
among them, you have people who have fought in the Sudan, in Afghanistan, and also in Somalia. So it is not a hidden
So it's not
issue.
it's not actually these days just a local group, is it? It is part of a network of Islamist militants which we've seen operating throughout Africa. You could argue part of a global jihadi network. And we know that there are links with, as you've said, the Sahel region of Niger. We believe, according to both Nigerian official sources and other international sources, there are links with the Somali Shabab as well. So this is not just homegrown anymore, is it?
Well, it started as a homegrown, and then it becomes a thing of global concern. It is true that it is a group that is well linked with other extremist groups within the Sahel and even up to Central Africa.
So when you accept that, why do you insist that the government of your country should not be treating the Boko Haram movement as a massive security threat with a consequent government security crackdown, but instead should be reaching out to them, talking to them and entering into dialogue? What kind of dialogue can there be with these people?
Well, if you are faced with issues of violence and specifically terror of this kind, as a government, there are two things you can do: to fight it or to sit down with them on the table. Now, since 2009, the Nigerian government have been fighting them, and it has not been able to produce any result. It has only led to killings of innocent souls within specifically areas of the Northeast. And people like me believe that there is a need to sit down with them and talk with them so that these issues could be addressed. And issues which they can present on the table will also be addressed. Because it happened some time ago. There was violence, there was terrorism in the Niger Delta, and it has been raging on for decades. And the government of Nigeria sat down with those they call militants, and then a carrot approach was adopted, and we had a solution to the problem now. So there is no reason why we should not use the same carrot approach to address the problem of Boko Haram in northern Nigeria.
Right, so you want a carrot approach to a bunch of militant Islamists who in the last 3 years have killed pretty much 1,000 Nigerians, and who in the last couple of months have killed Christians at prayer, have killed 180 people, civilians in Kano, and who continue to strike at police targets, at civilian targets right across the country, and you want to offer them a carrot?
Of course, a carrot was offered to the people that also killed, that also bombed, that also assassinated people in the Niger Delta. And I'm of the belief that if force could have ended the Boko Haram insurgency, it could have done that for the past 3 years, since that was the approach of the government. But for now, that has not worked. And if that has not worked, what do we need to do?
Yeah, you just seem to have changed your mind somewhat, because I was reading your own website earlier, and among the list of reasons you give for why Boko Haram has grown, and there are a dozen of them, but one of them, and I'm quoting your words, is the federal government's policy of appeasing militancy.
Yes.
So you don't want them to appease militancy. I would take it from those words that you actually would favor a crackdown.
Well, that was what I wrote in that website, were problems and solution to Boko Haram in the beginning, and things keep changing. For now, it was very clear that the arms insurgency of the Boko Haram cannot be crushed by the use of force.
Is it really clear?
It is very clear.
Because according to you, the federal government appeased for a long time, didn't really use force, and it's not just you. Other people have said that truthfully, they've said, you know, the federal government was never really serious about this. Some of the state governors were actually in cahoots with Boko Haram. You know, even the president has said some of his own people are probably working for Boko Haram from the inside. So one could say that a real crackdown hasn't been tried thus far, and maybe a real crackdown, real commitment by the security forces, the federal and state governments, might actually eliminate this problem.
Well, for now, in the northeastern part of Nigeria, specifically in areas, in a place called Maiduguri, which is in quote the headquarters of the Boko Haram, you have thousands of soldiers and policemen working there and fighting the group. And the group has increased its attacks in frequency and intensity. It is also reaching Abuja and also parts of the northwestern part of Nigeria. Now, there is also the need to correct this impression. If the Boko Haram attacks churches, it is not the whole Muslims in northern Nigeria that are attacking churches.
Of course not.
In northern part of Nigeria, you have indigenous Christians who are living there. And leaders, Muslim leaders, have been speaking out against attacks on churches. So there is a need to make this distinction very clear.
I understand
but
that, and I appreciate
the issue of appeasing
making.
militancy and appeasing violence, actually the government of Umaru Musa Yar'Adua and that of Jonathan Goodluck had a policy of giving money, to militants in the Niger Delta. And I can say they also bombed, they killed, they vandalized, And now they have been rehabilitated and there is no violence.
Well,
so
we could discuss long and
yeah.
hard the differences between the Niger Delta insurgents and the Boko Haram. There are many, many differences, but frankly, that isn't the focus of this interview.
Yeah.
What is much more germane to this interview is the fact that you actually have reached out to Boko Haram yourself.
Yes,
indeed, working with former President Obasanjo,
yes,
you have been to their northern redoubts. You have spoken to people who were related by family and marriage to one of the leaders who you referred to earlier, who was killed in 2009,
yes.
in an effort to establish a dialogue.
Yep.
And I would put it to you that your effort failed.
It has not failed.
With respect, people won't know that 2 days after you negotiated with one of these members of the family of a former leader of Boko Haram then murdered your interlocutor.
Boko Haram did not kill Fugu. And when Fugu was killed, 2 days after we left Maiduguri, I reached out to the group and asked them how and why should these things happen.
Well, you know that the Nigerian media believe that Fugu, this character you're talking about, was murdered by Boko Haram because they didn't want the negotiation to go any further.
But the Boko Haram came out openly to the media and ever denied killing Fugu.
Yeah, but nobody believes that.
But they have never
Do you believe Boko Haram? Why would you believe people who murder civilians?
They always own up to their killings, own up to their bombings, and always own up to. They never deny what they do.
But
and on these killings of Fugu,
these are murderers of innocents. Why should we take anything they say?
Well, first of all, we need to understand very clearly. In all the attacks the group has launched, it always came with a warning. And if they are targeting security agencies,
of the Civil Rights Congress of Nigeria, how can you say that the people in that church just outside Abuja who were murdered at Christmas had a warning? Of course they hadn't had a warning.
No, hold on. Let me tell you. If you are faced with a warning by a terrorist organization, there are two things you can do. The first one is either you take measures to protect the citizens, or secondly, you accede to the demands of those who issued the warning. But Nigerian government didn't do any of the two. And then people were left at the mercy of bombers.
Sorry, you are saying something so serious I cannot...
Hold on, in Kano, let me get you on this. Let me get you on this.
His government knew that these Christians were going to be murdered and just stood by, gave them no information, no warning, passed on no information about it, and just watched it happen.
In Kano, the leader of the Boko Haram issued 2 threats to the police and the government that their members were in detention, and if they are not released, they are going to take action. Now, the government did not take that threat seriously. So we are dealing with governments that do not take threats and also don't take advice from people like me and other well-meaning Nigerians. Do they need to sit down with this group so that this problem can come to an end?
You mentioned earlier the prospect of civil war. I've been reading extensively in the Nigerian press over the last few days, interviews with people from the north who are living in the south and now feel threatened because there is a retaliation, a backlash against northerners who are living in the south. I've also read many, many interviews with southerners, Christians living in the north who feel threatened, who have basically been told they have 3 days to get out of town. And what we have are both sides of the communal division, if you like, religious division in Nigeria, feeling that they are fundamentally threatened. How real, then, is the prospect of mass sectarian violence?
Well, whether Nigeria will remain one or not is not dependent on the attacks by Boko Haram. It is dependent on the ability of the leadership in the country to offer leadership in times of crisis. It's also dependent on the ability of Muslim leaders to come out openly and make a clear position of their desire and interest in continuity of Nigeria as a country. It's also dependent on Christian leaders' ability to exercise restraint. And the violence that is going on now could not be said to be is a violence between Muslim and Christians. But the group Boko Haram have made it very clear that they're going to fight the state, they're going to fight security agencies. And one of the steps they took, again, was attacking churches, but which people like me are working towards bringing that thing to an end.
But President Goodluck Jonathan said just the other day that he believes the country is in a more serious situation than it was in on the eve of the terrible civil war of the late 1960s. Do you agree with him?
Well, for President Jonathan Goodluck, he shouldn't lament. He should offer leadership when we are faced with a crisis like this. When a leader laments and those whom he is leading are lamenting, then we are not having a solution to the problem. It is true that Nigeria is in a perilous emergency as a result of the violence that is going on. But what we need now is a leader that will inspire and provide confidence to the people, and then also assured the people of the desire and determination of the government to protect their lives, and using all possible means, which includes negotiation and settlement, to end this violence.
And you said something very important. You said it is time for Muslim leaders, leaders of the Muslim community. And you're not a religious leader, of course.
Yes.
You're a secular leader, but I would put you in the category of Muslims, very well-respected Muslims in Nigeria who have a voice in their community. You said it's time for them to ensure that the message is Muslims want a unified Nigeria. But you said something else earlier as well. You said the truth is many Muslims do want Sharia law right across the nation. They do want to live in an Islamic Nigeria. How do those two statements go together?
Well, Muslims in northern Nigeria, many of them want Sharia law for themselves, not Sharia law imposed on the Christians. And when I say Muslims should come out and make a clear position of a desire for Nigeria to continue as one and indivisible country, I also made it very clear that Christian leaders must also exercise restraint, because some of them are making utterances and showing as if what the Boko Haram has done is truly reflective of the wishes, desires, and interests of Muslims in northern Nigeria, which is not.
Before we end, I must also refer to the other grim reality of Nigeria over the past few weeks. That is the strikes, the protests over the government's attempt to hike the price of fuel, which it then partially backed down from. But it saw troops on the streets of Nigeria's major cities. It saw violence between the security forces and workers and demonstrators. It made me wonder just how stable the very foundations of Nigerian democracy are. What do you think the answer is?
Well, Nigerian democracy has come to stay in the sense that we have been through turbulent times and we have been through bad times, but in all the times we've been able to recover from shocks and vibrations. What is happening in Nigeria today when it comes to the issue of troop deployment and protest? Well, these are all realities of democracy. In sub-Saharan Africa, there has never been any country that has such a vibrant civil society like Nigeria, when you see hundreds of thousands on the street demanding for change and pressurizing the government. The very fact that you can see people protesting in Nigeria is a clear indication that Nigeria's democracy is working. But as a civil society...
You think that applies both to the economic troubles that many Nigerians face and also the sectarian issues that we've talked about? You think in the end the democratic government of Nigeria, and some would argue it's not very democratic, is capable of meeting the challenge?
Well, they have no option. First of all, why were people on the street? People were in the street because the government decided to withdraw subsidy on petroleum product, which the common people believe that that was an attempt to ruin their life and impoverish them. And despite all economic reasons given by the government, the people don't believe in that. So I don't think that protest and civil disobedience campaign can bring down democracy.
We're almost out of time.
Yes, it will in fact strengthen it.
So in a word, you do not see a return to military dictatorship? It's got to be in a word.
For people like me who have been imprisoned by the military, I don't see the possibility of military, because we will certainly fight it. No matter how bad it is, we want to have a democracy at all times.
Shehu Sani, thanks for being on HARDtalk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.